Okay,
We are live.
we are live. Okay, committee, this is continuing our discussion. That's right, we voted out the ag bill. We need to vote to amend it if we decide to. The proposal was that the ag bill might be a place to put the request from Wygate. And so with that, Representative Solis, it's yours.
Okay. Well, good afternoon to you, Chair Cummings, and to the esteemed senators of the Finance Committee. I am Representative Bobby Farley Rubio, and I represent the town of Rygate in addition to the towns of Barnet and Waterford in Caledonia County. And I want to begin by stating my enthusiastic support for the continued operation of the Rygate Power Station. In the town of Rygate, it is a major employer and it constitutes a significant portion of the town's tax base. For our logging industry, it provides an essential market for wood that allows sustainable forestry to provide a profit for both loggers and landowners. For the state, it provides 3% of the renewable energy that we need, and it produces energy for 24 hours a day, 7 days a week in all weather conditions. I already knew of the value of the Rygate Power Station when I first began living in my district in 1999. During my first summer as a legislator, just last year, I was invited to get a tour of the plant. There I met Larry Anderson, the plant manager, and I was impressed by the quality and the cleanliness of their operation. The purpose of my visit was to learn about their pellet mill project, and I was immediately in support of this plan to use waste heat to manufacture wood pellets for local heating fuel needs. As we hope to help Vermonters transition away from fossil fuels for heating their homes, I thought this new mill would make advanced wood heating systems more affordable while also increasing economic opportunities in the district that I represent. When I learned that their power purchase agreement, as set by 2022's Act 155, was set to expire in 2032, I made a request for legislation to extend it until 2040. It would have been one of my first ever bills. That's how eager I was to maintain the viability of the plant. It was during this time that I began meeting with stakeholders who are well aware of the history of the plant and its current ownership. I spoke with many loggers, some as recently as this morning, who told me about long delayed payments for their wood deliveries. Some incurred deficits of tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars before they finally were paid for the wood that they had already delivered. Some incurred debt just to be able to pay their drivers, their workers, or for their fuel. Most stated that they really need the Rygate Power Station to remain in operation to sustain their businesses. The current owners, Rygate Associates, are an offshoot of a company that was once known as Stored Solar. Under that name, they had once owned many biomass plants throughout New England. At their different facilities, they had made promises of making their plants more efficient by using waste heat to warm shrimp cultivation ponds or greenhouses, but none of these projects ever materialized. Eventually, they went through a bankruptcy and were forced to sell most of their plants, with the exception of the one in Rygate. Many of the loggers in Maine and New Hampshire that supplied the now shuttered plants still have not been paid what they are owed. Today, they are asking the legislature to give them an extension for the deadline that they need to complete their mandated efficiency project. I understand.
So, I guess I do have,
Of course, they can.
I apologize.
It's okay. Well, so just to back up, they've asked you for this extension. And the delay that they have is based on an Act 250 challenge that they're facing, and I understand that. And I checked with the Department of Environmental Conservation and confirmed that they have indeed applied for the air quality permit that stands as the last obstacle to the commencement of their plan. So it is seemingly impossible that they will have enough time to complete the pellet mill project, assuming that they received their final permits even today. But if we, the General Assembly, do nothing, the Rygate Power Station will lose their PPA, possibly forever, in November of this year. But I was present 2 weeks ago when their advocate requested a proposal for a 1-year extension of the deadline for their pellet project's completion. I have come before you today with an alternate proposal that requires more accountability from Rygate Associates, with the benefit of a 10-year extension of their PPA once the pellet mill is actually built. So the legislative language that I have already sent you to your committee assistant will allow the PPA to be paused if they miss their deadline for the pellet mill project, and once completed, the PPA will be reactivated. Their advocate has told me that any pause in the PPA where they can still sell power at market rates will force them to shut the plant down and lay off their workforce. I certainly do not want that to happen. If my original proposal is not accepted, I am willing to propose a compromise that will allow them to keep the PPA even if they miss their deadline this year. In order to keep their PPA, I propose that they pay their contractors every 7 days without fail. And that's the norm in the biomass industry. And I also insist that a third-party ombudsman be appointed by the Public Utilities Commission, paid for by Rygate Associates, will be made to supervise the Pellet Mill project with a quarterly review until the project is completed. Once complete, the Rygate Power Station can then receive a 10-year extension of their current PPA. And so that's
I
my,
don't remember it. Yeah, did you?
I do.
Okay, that is it. It's okay, you brought up transportation, and you still need to put this on that. So that's it, just.
That's it for that, thank you, sorry.
so I'm done with my proposal and I'm happy to take any questions.
Okay, as I remember it, I think your Rygate was only asking for a 1-year extension, at which point, depending on how much economy they got, they would get a new PPA from the PUC, but that would be, and they're only asking for a 1-year extension, and your proposal is give them 5 years with an ombudsman.
It's basically that to maintain the PPA, if they miss the deadline for their current Pellet Mill project, which is this October, which
Right.
I understand
I
is
think,
impossible.
yeah, they are gonna make it.
So they can keep the PPA if they are guaranteed to pay their contractors every 7 days, keep to the industry standard without fail. And then also have an ombudsman to make sure that the Pellet Mill project is real. I've been shown some receipts and some financing agreements, but I haven't, the machines are in Europe, as far as I know, if they exist at all. And I would love to believe that they're gonna build a pellet mill, but given their past history of promising things that never happened, I want to build in some more rigorous accountability.
Okay. Think you probably will get some friendly voices on this committee. I will say, this is the first at all realistic proposal I've seen. One that would help the local economy more than just burning scrap. But yeah, the question is accountability. Senator, you've done.
I've been over the planet several times and was encouraged in this new ownership of their plans. Have you had, one of the questions I've been unable to get answered is what percentage of the raw materials, the chips, come from Vermont and New Hampshire, Maine, respect. And there's, well, it's about such and such and such and such. Have you been able to get an actual number out of them?
Well, I was here last time when this question came up and I've been told the same number, which is roughly 50-50. That Rygate is literally on the Connecticut River and loggers in New Hampshire supply just as much as from Vermont. But this changes from week to week. I've met loggers that no longer supply Rygate because of the payment issues, including one that literally sees the stacks from his yard. He is based in Monroe, New Hampshire. So I would say that where I live, people drive across the river several times a day.
They purchase quantities of chips and pay, or apparently don't pay for it on time. And we are paying above market rates for the electricity. And I believe most of us here at the committee would be eager to see them successful in what they're trying to do. Because that might actually make it possible to buy the electricity at market rates. And I just wondered if you had more success finding out, how much comes from Maine, how much from New Hampshire, and how much from Vermont, other than a rough estimate.
I've only gotten the same numbers you've heard, which is roughly 50-50. There's a biomass plant in Berlin, for example, that Maine loggers would most likely use because it's closer. But I think that they decide where they're going depending on what's going on from week to week. So I think this number is sort of constantly.
Didn't they have a plant up there that exploded or burned that uses 3 or 4 or 5 times the amount of chips that go into Rite Aid?
I don't know those details, but yeah, I think that one either went bankrupt or is no longer in operation, but, yeah. I just know, I mostly know just about what's going on at Friday Gate.
Okay, Senator Schiff.
I'd like to apologize for being late, sir. I did not hear the first part of that, and I'd love it if you would be willing to share it just so that I could read it.
Yeah, if I clean up my notes, I'll be happy to share them with Zanny and give them to you. Yes, but I basically talked about that I've been a cheerleader for the plan. I've wanted it to succeed, and it was only when I spoke to the loggers and I learned of the history of the current ownership that I became very concerned about giving them an extension without some kind of built-in accountability. So that's a quick summary of what I said.
And have you talked to their representative or, I mean,
Very frequently. Yeah.
okay, because I don't know that we can impose, we can say what we will do. I don't think we can impose a business agreement between two independent parties. We can say on what conditions we will consider extending the
So given that my original proposal, which is in the language that you have already received, if it's true that that's too extreme, that the pausing of the PPA, which is what will make them sell at market rates, but that's essentially half of the price that they're paid now for power.
Right.
So if I don't want layoffs in my town, I do not want this plant to shut down even for a few days or weeks. But the compromise that I've worked on with Richard Morris here is one that involves a strict, and I don't know the enforcement mechanism, but their PPA could be paused if they fail to pay their loggers within 7 days, and I think that they need that kind of enticement, encouragement to make sure that this never fails. And then the ombudsman project is to make sure that they actually are following through with the purchase of the equipment for the pellet mill. And once that's installed and operational in Rygate, they get a benefit of an extended PPA. And what I've learned is if this pellet mill is gonna work as you heard them say 2 weeks ago, it'll double the amount of wood that they buy from local loggers, and it will provide my area with a lot of economic activity. So it's a win-win for everyone, but I just need to make sure that they don't get
Yeah.
an extension without accountability.
we need.
Local loggers means,
Well, if in my community, New Hampshire and Vermont, we're together. I know that the landowners can come from all over too. But what I'm thinking of is the pellets will be sold. We have folks with the Affordable Heat Act coming up that will be incentivized to switch to advanced wood heating systems. If right now we import pellets from Canada, which is a little crazy given how much forest that we have here. And it would be great if Rite Aid was a source of not just local pellets, but export to New Hampshire. So even if the wood does come from New Hampshire, the pellets being made in Rite Aid means the sales and the sales tax will be going to Vermont.
I think everybody in the room would be excited for that to happen.
Yeah, me too. This would be a huge victory for me, for my community, and a doubling of the amount of wood going through that area would just be seen as a great economic boon. And I probably don't need to remind you, Rite Aid is one of many towns that, when I moved there, had 15 dairy farms, now there's 2. So the economy is hurting in every other way. Logging is one of the few vibrant parts of the economy, and we really need it to keep going.
Okay, committee, any other questions? Can you get your proposals in writing to,
It would take just a few minutes of cleaning up typos, and I will send it to Zane right away.
okay, we can clean up the typos, or we can make the typos?
I think the typos are, you can deal with that, but it strikes me as a fine proposal if we understand what the consequence is if what you've proposed doesn't come to pass. And we have some insurances from whoever would be the one who could say enough is enough and say stop.
Yeah.
Is that in your proposal?
Well, I haven't figured out the mechanism for enforcement. I don't know how quickly the Public Utilities Commission could act on canceling or pausing the PPA. I don't want it to be canceled, because I also want to allow the opportunity, for example, if another buyer wanted to take over the plant, that they would be able to buy it and continue the PPA and make the plant viable, even if it was a different owner. So I don't want anything to endanger the PPA permanently. My original proposal was that it would be paused and then resumed once the project was completed. This one would actually pause it if they fail to pay their loggers. This is my most recent proposal. Well, they fail to pay their loggers on time, it gets paused until the pellet mill is built. It's strict, but I feel like if they had that kind of strict enforcement, they would pay people on time.
We're eager to learn about the strict enforcement,
Well,
at least I am.
I can't tell you exactly how that would work. I would consult with legislative council about the mechanism, and the Public Utilities Commission would probably be the one.
see, ombudsman, and that meant they had to hire someone.
Mm.
I think the answer this year would be no. At least it'll get that person pinned on the wall in appropriations, and if they have the money, they'll vote it out in the budget and it can go through, but if they don't, it's just a really tight year here.
I propose that Rygate Associates pay for the ombudsman,
Okay,
so they, as a cost of their project. And so they pay for the salary of this person, and the PUC oversees them
okay.
and selects them.
And we will give Rygate a chance to talk, because I also have a feeling that money may be very tight in this project. And I don't want to see us kill it trying to do a good thing.
Looking at the deadline we have of crossover, if we get just the extension out, that still puts it over because it's gonna be on an S bill. It puts it over to the House, but the conversation could continue, right?
Absolutely, my conscience would be troubled if I didn't have some accountability built into this.
Accountability has been very voiced for this committee. Most of the members who knew Senator McDonald and I have been through this entire process. And yes, I mean, the accountability now is if we do nothing, their PPA goes away in October.
Yeah.
And that's it. They're out there at market rate. And it is an economic engine in your area. This is a chance for us to make it better.
And in Maine and Vermont and New Hampshire.
What have you got against people in Maine and New Hampshire?
I don't,
They're not
if it's, those folks log and we're subsidizing their salaries with above market rates.
We're also selling that power to the grid, so they're buying some of
At
the
above,
market.
and everybody on our Vermont grid is picking up a share of the subsidy that we are providing to people in other states that produce the chips.
He said, I'm gonna do Senator McCormick because he's been here longer. There are penalties.
She's back.
There's a jar going in there for absence, please.
For working absences or playing absences?
Any absences.
I had a friend, every time I heard a little voice, said a dirty word.
Oh,
Yeah, that's a thing. No, and the discussion about global warming, we often decide which thing we burn is cleaner than which other things we burn. That, for example, because of the carbon cycle, probably burning biomass is not as dirty as burning coal. But at some point, we've got to stop burning stuff. We've got to not burn anything. We got to use the wind better. We got to use solar better, maybe geothermal. And we're starting 40 years later. This conversation is one that should have happened started 40 years ago. That said, I recognize that the infrastructure to replace our reliance on things like biomass is not there yet. And so to just shut it down, which frankly some of my constituents do say, is not realistic. Thinking long term, and again, we should have started thinking long term 40 years ago. But thinking long term, we got to start thinking about not burning anything. But if we're burning, the carbon cycle is such that biomass is probably a lesser of evils. And so I will support.
And we'll have Senator Kirsch looking to tell you about the efficiency of the new high efficient, very expensive, but very efficient biomass, wood pellet furnaces.
I can speak.
All excited about that, would like to give an opportunity to have that happen.
Yes.
And we'd like to know the consequences of the failure, and out of a courtesy for the people that we're trying to give an opportunity to, they should be able to give us the percentages of where the fuel comes from. And if they can't, that scares me on their ability to manage a plant to the other things.
Senator Bernie.
Representative Rubio, thanks so much for this. We've had some good conversations. I'm glad you're here. I'm just wondering if we have time before going out to the bill to hear from Mr. Lincoln.
We can hear from anyone. We have a walkthrough at 4 with Michael O'Grady for another battery, rechargeable battery, putting them
Yeah.
into the manufacturer responsibility. So yes, we will hear Mr. Lincoln. We will hear Ms. Morris, and I have Ed Larson on the agenda next. And do we have any other questions? Thank you.
My pleasure, thank you.
If you want to, haven't been in here in a while.
That's simple.
Yeah.
Good afternoon, I'm Ed Larson. I'm lobbyist for the Vermont Forest Products Association. Good to be with you all. Been a lot. I asked the sheriff for just a few minutes. I felt this was a good time to put our association on the record, what our position is regarding Rygate. And it's very simply this: we urge legislation. We urge legislative action that is necessary to keep Rygate Power open and viable. Okay, so some of the things I'm hearing so far are encouraging. We understand they need more time. They are moving forward. And we're very encouraged with the idea that they have, the project that they have in mind, and the fact that they are moving forward with it. It's a crucial outlet for many of my members, particularly in the Northeast on the Connecticut River Valley. I'm a forester. I ship to Rygate on my jobs as far away as Roxbury, Chittenden County, sometimes. So, you know, there's at least 35 logging contractors at any one time that are shipping there. And it's a very important outlet. It's a very important outlet for a great amount of the wood that we harvest. Not a lot of markets for pulp grade wood anymore. Paper mills are further and further away, and so having a biomass plant within our geographic region, we have only 2. It's crucial that we keep this plant going. Crucial. I am not really in a position to speak to the proposal that Representative Felice Rubio put up. At this point, I think it's important that the plant, that the owners of the plant respond to that and indicate their capability to do what is being asked. I do understand that there are some loggers that are very unhappy with the history that they've had with that plant and this current owner. We get that. But our urge is for you is to let's not take risks. Let's just stabilize the thing, get them what they need, the time they need, and hope that we can move forward. Any discontinuance or pause on the preferred purchase arrangement could be a shutdown. The rest of the year not willing.
I think last year, moving forward, if it shut, there would be 33 to 34 laws, it was then family, the small businesses that would be out of business.
Well, there are other markets, okay, and if indeed this outfit does not pay the bills, we don't have to ship there. So I guess to say it in a kind of rhetorical sense, if the legislature shuts down the plant, that's on you. But if the marketplace shuts down the plant, then it's on Rygate.
Yeah.
So
Okay,
let's keep it going.
any questions? Mr. Larson? Okay, thank you. Okay, Bridget, do you want to come up or do you want to let Mr. Lincoln? I'm happy to do that if you. I know you can't. You've got to talk to your client. I assume you did all these proposals, but just tell us what is happening financially down there.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the committee, Bridget Morris Strategies on behalf of Variety Associates. Again, thank you for the time to consider our request for an extension. We have been speaking quite a lot with Representative Bobby Farley's Rubio, and we appreciate, an open dialogue with him. And we understand what he's trying to do to protect loggers and constituents. The first thing I just wanted to mention, Senator McDonald, the question about the supply side and where the fuel comes from. One of the things that you built into Act 155 was a request that Rygate reports those numbers to you. And they did that last summer. I sent you, I know it was town meeting week, but I did send you the report and I will resend it. But I have those numbers here by state and region where the supply comes from. And I just did quick math because it's by ton. But it's about 41% is Vermont-based wood that's supplying this. New Hampshire is the majority and a small amount from Massachusetts and Connecticut, but Vermont wood is about 41%.
Not me.
And I can show you the tonnage there as well.
And not me.
And not Maine?
Yeah.
No, not Maine. No, not Maine. Connecticut, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, and Vermont. So I will resend that so you have it. And it'll show you by detail there.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
It's been a long time getting there.
Okay. The other,
We're paying 100% of the subsidy.
Right.
And in order to employ the people who provide 41% of the materials.
You have a solution, Sam.
Pardon?
You have a solution to do
Why,
it.
to plan to be successful in earning enough money on the heat of drying pellets that they can sell the stuff at market rates.
Yes, I think that's all of our goal.
so as you said, I will need time once there's actual language to review that with my client on any proposal. But what I can say is that any cause in the PPA, whether it's in the language that is going to be presented or as a punitive measure, if they fail to pay loggers within a week, creates a lot of uncertainty. And we go from 10 cents a kilowatt hour down to recently 3.5 to 3.6 cents a kilowatt hour. And that's a huge difference, and
It's a
which
substantial subsidy.
which is why it's a very valid reality that if there's any pause, that there will be layoffs, soon afterwards. I mean, that just happened in Berlin, New Hampshire recently when the PPA, the governor vetoed the PPA and the plant went down. So I think it's a very strong reality, and so we would like to take that off the table. That being said, I understand, if you want to build protections in for loggers, we would just need time to review it. And I would just say that, yes, on the payment side, there is this PPA for consistent 10 cents a kilowatt hour. And on the logging supplying side, which, I'm not an expert in this, but from what I've heard and what I'm learning is that the suppliers are charging a different amount. I mean, it's a rolling, it's the market demand on what the suppliers are charging to Rygate. So
Okay.
if there's only a week to pay that, there may be errors along the way, and I just want to make sure that, there's some provision in there for really unusual times where that price may be very high and the money's not there to back it up. This is what I'm saying, like maybe a floor and a ceiling or something like that,
Okay,
on the supply side.
this week is the first time we've heard that there is a present problem with paying suppliers. And at this point, I don't think we know how large that is. I assume it's all their suppliers.
Well, Madam Chair, I don't have direct oversight over books, but I would prefer to get you a written response from the company as far as that goes. I think
Yes,
there seem to be different perceptions. I know that it sounds like there are very valid concerns. But I think that, I'd rather they respond to you in writing directly.
yes, and I think we understand that. Right now, Representative Rubio has given us 2 proposals. This committee hasn't adopted. Like, I don't yeah, I'd like to give the company a chance to respond and a chance to do what is the right thing. It's a corporation, your new president is from Turkey. I don't know how your internal cash flow is working. But as our concern is that our Vermont citizens are, being treated fairly, which means they get paid on time. We are investing 7 cents a kilowatt hour, and it's more than we pay anyone else. And for that return, what we've asked from the company is a plan to operate more efficiently so that they can get that per kilowatt hour rate down. And it sounds like, and this is, I think, 3 years of renegotiation, maybe 4. So this time it sounds like you've got a good proposal. But I think the concern is our people aren't getting paid, and you're supposed to have a building up, I think, in October, and you lose your PPA. You're asking us to give you another year. But, you know, you are collecting a serious amount of money, and we need to feel that the company is serious about getting this thing up and running. That right now the plant is what it was a year ago. And I think we're looking to see some progress.
So, I'm glad we're having this conversation. I hope we get to a place where we can help assure waters are paid on time. It's just a very familiar scenario to watch people in producing commodities, whether it's milk or logs, end up on the short end of the stick, where
Yes.
they're the least able to afford things often. And they're not controlling the price, and they often can get stuck waiting. So I'd love to see us sort that out so it's fair and time.
And it is difficult for us because we don't have access to the company's books.
Sure.
We don't know if the money is going to corporate headquarters, or there just isn't the money coming in to pay the suppliers. But I think we would like to tack this on to the ag bill. It may be the only vehicle we find this year. We don't usually get ag bills. I don't know if we're getting an electric bill of any kind. But I think we'd like to hear from the company as to what their plan is. And we had steps before, you had to have something under contract, you had to have it out of the ground. What their proposal would be for what those steps are for the next year. So we know if in October you don't have all the contracts signed and all the building materials ordered and paid for you. I mean, we need to see what they're proposing to us to get this extension.
Madam Chair, if I may, I think that when we try to offer things that they come up short. And I think it'd be great to see what would make the logging community feel comfortable to move forward. And we would like to respond to that and be a part of that conversation. So I would really like to see a proposal if possible from them as to what they are proposing.
I think they're proposing to they haven't started this issue. We have. I think what would make any worker unhappy or happy is the normal expectation that you get paid on time. When you deliver your goods, you expect to get a check.
So I also think that since the last time in 2022, there was a contract that was sort of put in place where they do have to pay within 3 weeks. And I think there has been some I've heard two sides as to whether or not, so even though we're hearing that they're late because their average pay time is say 5.6 days, they may still be within the 3-week contractual obligation.
Can you find us a copy?
I have
that?
their
Can
information,
you share that? with
yes,
us?
but I still think that there may be outlying scenarios where that has been.
We will start talking to the logging community. And, we could tell you what we expect, but we have 1 week. And it would be much better for you to come back and tell us what you can do. It'll just cut out another 5 days, and if this isn't ready to go by the end of next week, it's not going unless we find another vehicle.
Thank you, Matt.
And we need to feel that the company is involved in this discussion. Thank you. Okay. Yes.
Sometimes I make statements if you listen to.
Really?
It would be a better deal for Vermont rate payments to pay the loggers to cut the trees down and leave them in the forest than to pay the above market rates for which only 41% of the payments go to Vermont loggers. You could get a better deal if you did that. And I wouldn't propose that because it shows the folly that we're in and how we've turned things upside down. But that's what the math would say is best for Vermont loggers and Vermont.
The loggers should still get paid, but should leave the.
Oh, you don't make electricity, you simply cut the trees down, pay them for cutting the trees down, and they would get paid.
Where would the money come from?
Well, where does the money come from now? You charge all the ratepayers for not burning logs in Reigate because it's cheaper
Okay,
than burning
Then
logs in Reigate.
who do we charge to pay the logs? I mean, it.
I don't wanna take time working out the details on the math
The
says.
May say
Yeah.
that, but right
And
now, we've got to get a source, and
we're
I
in
also have
year
to.
30 or
forest the
35 of
we-
this
If we would
process.
turn ourselves into a tinderbox with all that scrap lumber laying on the floor of the forest,
It's
we
not,
had floods, but we could have droughts.
it's not a proposal, Madam Chair, it's an observation of the math.
But you're right. I mean, we are struggling to keep this plant alive,
For,
mostly for the economic impact closing it would have on the logging community and on the towns where people that work there live and the loggers live. We're trying to make it less of a bad deal. And it is difficult. I think we need to see what kind of contract is in that says 3 weeks. I can't imagine anyone here ever signing or requiring a contract that says you got 3 weeks to pay. And I don't know. Mr. Lincoln, if you wanna come on up and maybe you can enlighten us.
please refute my math.
Thank you, Madam Chair. For the record, Sam Lincoln, owner of Lincoln Farm Timber Harvesting in Randolph Center, Vermont, mechanized logging operation, past supplier of Reigate Power Station with wood fuel through a third-party contractor, chippers that come to my job and take the wood away. I would,
Deputy Secretary.
Deputy Commissioner, thank you for the raise and the, bump up.
Give you a little pay grade. Not right up there.
Right, retroactive thing.
Farmer too, is that's your family, or is that you?
It's my family owns farm in Randolph Center as well, sir. Former Deputy Commissioner, Department of Forest Parks and Recreation. I'm not here to represent anybody but myself today. I am on the board of directors with Special Logging Contractors in the Northeast. And various other volunteer positions in the industry. Have a vast network of relationships, collegial relationships with logging contractors in Vermont, so I provide some of my own personal experience, and I will also provide some of what I've been told by others as well. and feel free to just distinguish those if you wish. We support, I support, the plant remaining in, business and operating as usual, 24 hours a day. No question about that. We also, I'd say my business, supports the efficiency requirements that have been put in place to more efficiently utilize the wood, the increased market potential for the low-grade wood that would be purchased there. And also, I support Representative Carlos Rubio's proposal to bring some accountability to the situation that's going on. As deputy commissioner and as a private sector business owner, there's been concerns about payment from Raggy Power Station to suppliers, related payments. Past history has been, industry standard has been payment within 7 days. Their past owners at that plant that were under the same, or under similar PPAs and things like that, were paying promptly to the suppliers. Burlington Electric pays promptly to the suppliers. The sawmills, the pulp mills that we pay, we have electronic deposit on a weekly basis for the forest products that we deliver to those markets. So I've been on the record with the Public Utility Commission asking for the logging contractors to be paid within 7 days. When the PPA was last discussed in front of that commission. And the owners represented, their attorney represented that the concerns about payment had been taken care of at that time. That everybody was paid up and there wouldn't be any more problems. We had a period in which I think close to 6 months that the scales did not work for the trucks to be weighed as they came in. And I initiated an investigation at the Agency of Agriculture, Weights and Measures Division, to get that resolved because loggers were delivering that were not able to weigh their trucks when they pulled in there. So there, I support the plant staying open and I support there being some accountability in place. And again, as others have said, do not want to see the plant closed down. But it's not of much value to Vermonters if the plant is operating and people that are operating on razor thin profit margins. This winter, we're 18 months into unsuitable conditions for harvesting timber. I typically work 160 to 180 days a year where the ground conditions are suitable. I worked 103 days in 2023. So the logging contractors that are delivering chips to Raggy Power Station are in stretched as thin as possibly could be financially, and for them not to be paid on time is outrageous in my opinion. So a lot of these concerns would go away if we didn't have to negotiate with someone that I say we, if the legislature, others are not negotiating for basic business practices to be put in place and followed. Be happy to take questions.
Okay, any questions? None. Okay.
A curiosity question. So with weather changing, are you having to change practice like tracked vehicles or like how are you dealing with you can't get in?
So one of the things that we have been doing is that we don't harvest chips on every job anymore. There are some jobs where the soil conditions are such that we actually cut the tops up and lay them down as corduroy for our machines to get through the woods.
Yeah.
We're also loggers in Vermont in the region are looking to use low ground pressure equipment potentially as a new practice to avoid rutting and issues there, increase their workable days for certain.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
And Ms. Morris, I think you can tell your clients that this committee is going to at least want a guarantee that their suppliers will be paid within 7 days. Well, I'm not sure what other kinds of guarantees, but you are getting paid the same PPA as previous owners, and it sounds like they managed to pay people on time. Okay. Committee. We have 4 o'clock, I think we just asked Ellen, I didn't see Ellen come in, she must have been sitting over there where I can't see her.
Quiet as a bug.
Yes, to give us just a background of these negotiations have been going on. For I think 4 years, at least 3, there's been 2 agreements that I'm aware of. This was the 3rd set of agreements, and we still have a plant. It's declined, we have a plant that's not paying on time and is not improving, so. I suppose if they come back, the trade-off might be that people get paid in 10 days and they have the cash flow to do what we want. Because we haven't talked about that. There's a cost. So that's it. We are, if we're gonna do Rygate on ag, and then ag is set to go. We will have to do it by next Friday, which means we're gonna have to have an agreement or working on an agreement and have some communications with the House if we can't get the whole thing put together, but we're ready to move it, that they will get that agreement up and running. So I think that's it. Do I dare give you a 10-minute break? You have a 5 minutes, I expect you back here